All right. Well, hello everyone. It's good to see you guys again. It's been a few weeks. I hope everyone stayed warm and stayed dry today and are doing well and moving right along. Believe it or not, we are basically at the halfway point of the semester already, which seems just flat out scary as hell. But here we are, and we're over the hill, downhill, the rest of the way. No worries, Heather. I gotcha. So this week we are going to be talking about I want to say it's tactics related to precision teaching, direct instruction, and programmed instruction. But I think that a conversation around those three topics as a whole is necessary to have first. And then as we talk about each of those, kind of looking at some of the tactics that we typically see maybe related with each of those things. So what I was looking for, which I found, and we no longer have access to because it was recorded on Adobe Connect years and years and years ago, like a year ago, is I had a whole, PowerPoint and video tutorial on how to use a standard acceleration chart, which is the primary tool for precision teaching. I made a video of that so that I didn't have to spend this entire class this week explaining how to use a standard acceleration chart. But like I just said, I no longer have access to that video. So I'm going to record a new one and get that posted so that you guys have that tutorial on how to actually use a standard acceleration chart, so you know how to use that primary tool that goes along with precision teaching. Okay, so be on the lookout for that that video, that tutorial, and hopefully that will be able to stay available to you guys through Zoom. All right. Before we jump in and talk about as much as we are going to get through today, are there any questions? Are there any questions regarding DTS quizzes, mentor-mentee stuff, BDS modules, research summaries, data collections? Any questions that are burning a hole for anybody?
There was some discussion about the BDS modules, the number of them and the number that y'all had set for us to try to do was like no more than 15. So basically, I don't expect us to complete this module during this class. Are we splitting it between this one and the next one, or?
No. So and I had gotten a couple of questions. So let me clarify, and hopefully it's not too late. So for the class overall, there are a lot for this class. There are 50 overall. In any one turn-in, you are to complete between a minimum of 5 and a maximum of 15. All right, so and there are 4 turn-ins. So you can do 12 in the first one, 13 in the second one, 12 in the third one, 13 in the second one. You could never you have to do all of them to meet the class. So you can't do 5, 5, 5, and 5, because that would only get you 20. So if you do 5 in one, then you would have to do 15, 15, and 15, which would get you your 50, 15, 30, 45, 50, right? So however you break it up between the 4 modules or the 4 turn-ins is totally fine, so long as you stay within that range and you get through all of them. All right. So there's, at this point, there's virtually no way for me to ensure that your turn-in is keeping you on track. So that's kind of on your honor, all right? At the end of the semester, I will be going through and kind of looking at I'm not going to look at your 4 turn-ins, but I'm going to look at your report, your class report, to make sure that they are all completed. And that will validate your grade for each of those 4 turn-ins. Does that help? Does that clarify? Okay, cool. Or does anyone else, does that make sense for everyone? It was one of those things where I definitely know that I wrote those directions in a way that I understood them myself, but I knew what the goal was. I didn't know if those directions were clear from someone who, like you guys, who didn't know exactly what the goal was. So that should make sense. So your range for any one turn-in is between 5 and 15. You have to get through all 50 while staying within that range by the end of the semester. Okay, cool, awesome. How are things going with your mentors? Good, awesome. I had class with them last night, and we talked a little bit about how things were going from there, and we spent more time last Monday, and their comments overall have been overwhelmingly impressed with the amount of change in behavior that they've seen from you guys from like research summary 1 to 2 to 3, and how your quizzes are improving very, very rapidly. So they're very much recognizing and appreciating how you guys are taking their feedback and incorporating that information into your future your future work. They're really seeing that. They really like that. That's really motivating and reinforcing for them. So keep that up. All right. Okay, cool. No other questions? We're good? All right.
Biggest thing with my mentor is turning in Dr. Cohane's assignments in enough time for them to get it back to me for the due date, because the timing is falling right around the due date of this class to get it in a week before.
Gotcha.
It's kind of just putting it to where I'm turning Dr. Cohane's stuff in late.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's it's what Dr. G and I will say for every class is prioritize Dr. Cohane's class. Like that's the one that you want to be on time for. She is much more stringent with deadlines, and you know, she's just more contingent than either of us are, for sure. So if you're having to choose over the course of a couple of 3 days of which assignment to do first, always do hers first, and just communicate that to your mentor. Like, hey, I'm making sure that I get Dr. Cohen's stuff into you in enough time. I'll get you Dr. Shamner, Dr. Gotra's stuff as soon as I can. All right. And they know I'm like coaching them on the backside of how to work with you guys and stay on top of you guys getting your work in without being pushy, with understanding some of the different contingencies. So that's part of the shaping process for them, and that will be part of your shaping process next year when you guys are in that role. All right, cool, good. All right, let's go ahead and jump in to our conversation this week. So precision teaching, direct instruction, and programmed instruction. These 3 topics overall they're grouped together specifically, or for a reason, which should come as no surprise. But what's unique about all 3 of these things is they're defining them as a tactic is not really the right thing to do. Defining them as a curriculum is not the right thing to do. Precision teaching, direct instruction, programmed instruction are all kind of delivery or instructional methodologies that should be mastered as part of a behavior analytic repertoire. All right. Programmed instruction is kind of a bit of an outlier because, well, it's programmed and it should just be able to run on its own. But even with that, there's a level of decision making that's built into it that is very similar to that of direct instruction and precision teaching. All right. So let's start with precision teaching. When I say precision teaching, what type of instruction or what comes to mind? What do you think of when you think of precision teaching? There should be one word that comes to mind. That one word starts with an F. It has to do with going fast. What do you guys think?
Fluency?
Yeah, exactly. Precision teaching is all about fluency. All right. Precision, the tool, as I mentioned before, that is primarily used in precision teaching is called the standard acceleration chart. Has anyone seen a standard acceleration chart? All right. Has anyone not? Let me pull it up. Where is it? I can't even find it now. Standard acceleration. It's not the celebration chart. It's something that commonly pops up. Hang on one sec. Should absolutely have this. There we go. All right. So everyone can kind of see that. I'll zoom in as far as I can. Okay, so everyone can see this? Okay, so this is our standard acceleration chart. And what you see with precision teaching is a desire to measure behavior in its truest form. All right, that's the goal of precision teaching. It's not trying to look at artifacts of behavior. It is trying to get the truest measure of behavior that you possibly can. And the tool that's used for that, like I said, is the standard acceleration chart. So what does the standard acceleration chart do? How is it used? What type of behaviors can or can't it be used for? And what type of decisions are made as a result of it? All right. So the first thing is understanding what precision teaching and standard acceleration are actually looking at. So this is a chart that says count per minute. Okay, fine. How many behaviors are observed in a minute? Are there any behaviors that are of interest to behavior analysts that lie outside of the purview of being able to be counted per minute? Let me pause. Out of the purview of being able to be counted in some way, shape, or form. Without thinking too hard, what do you think? Yes or no? Tanya, you're kind of shaking your head no, right? When we talk about behaviors of interest for behavior analysts, we are talking about observable and measurable. So if you can observe it, and you can observe it in such a way that it can be measured, then you can count it, right? Counting, as some people think, as myself included, isn't always necessarily the best way to measure a behavior. Sometimes duration is a more meaningful measure. Sometimes topography or magnitude is a more meaningful measure, but count is a measure that can be inherent in any observable behavior. If I can observe it, I can count it. I can count tantrums per day. I can count hits per day. I can count correct responses per day. I can count any of these behaviors that we have of interest. All right. What precision teaching attempts, or what not attempts, but what precision teaching does is they say, all right, if we have an amount of behavior that we can count, then why do we look at scales or context? Why do we put that behavior in a context that is arbitrary or inaccurate to the actual behavior itself? So what on earth do I mean by that? If I am looking at, let's say, correct responses to learn units, all right? Easy enough one to do. At the end of a day, how do I typically graph correct learn units? Well, what would I do? I would look up all my program sheets, I would count up all my pluses, and I would put that on a graph. That graph would either be number of correct responses or percentage of correct responses, right? Typically how we do it, usually the raw number. They got 256 learn units correct out of 349 total learn units delivered. I can easily get a percentage off of that, but that's not as meaningful of a number as that 256 itself. Okay. But what does that 256 actually represent? What does that 349 total learn units actually represent? That represents the number delivered, or correct and delivered, between the hours of 8 a.m. and 3 p.m. All right. It's not an accurate representation of how much behavior you have actually seen in a day. Whether it's intentional or not, do parents or caregivers deliver learn units prior to showing up at clinic or school? Potentially. Are there more that are delivered after school or after clinic at home? Potentially. Why aren't those graphed? Why don't we look at those? And don't search for the answer. When we mark down 256 correct, 349 total, what we're really saying is that those were the number of learn units delivered in the observed period between 8 a.m. and 3 p.m. That is not a true measure of how many were delivered or responded to throughout the day, only what was observed between those hours. Now, that might be the densest period of learn unit responses and delivery. That might be the only contingent time period of learn unit delivery and responses. It might be the most meaningful, but it does not represent the capability of the child throughout the day. Now, learn units and instruction are maybe not the best example, because we don't want to be looking at learn units, or we don't want to be in a situation where something like learn units are delivered throughout the day. We don't need to measure from 6 a.m. when the child gets up to 9 p.m. when the child goes to bed, right? That would be overkill. But what if we're talking about a behavior of concern? What if we're talking about number of physical assaults? What if we're talking about number of mans emitted? We sure want to know what happens outside of that window, right? The behavior of interest does not start and stop while the child is at school or in clinic. There are other observable behaviors that we want to see. And what we really want to get an idea of is what is the totality of what is being emitted, of the behavior that is being emitted. So what a standard acceleration chart and what precision teaching begin to do is they start to look at a comparable time frame that can be represented by anything as short as 5 or 10 seconds to anything as long as an entire day. And the equalizing response to, or the equalizing measure for that is count per minute. All right. So if I have 256 correct learn units in a day, so that would be 8. So 8 to 3 is 7 hours. 7 hours is 60 minutes, or 7 hours times 60 minutes is 420 minutes. So if I had 256 correct responses, 256 divided by 420, that would be 0.6 correct responses per minute. And I can graph that right about here. This line right about here, 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, 0.5, 0.6. And I can start to see, do my responses per minute increase over time? All right. What's the significance of that? Why is that meaningful? Any thoughts? Everyone's tired. Why might that be? Go ahead, Tanya. Go ahead. You're on mute.
Yeah, depending on what behavior you're looking for. I mean, if you want to increase the behavior and they become more fluent with it, you know, it's showing that you are making progress with the behavior. It would. I get the increase decrease thing sometimes kind of gets me. Yes, I guess you could be decreasing and increasing the. But yeah, if you're wanting to see more of the behavior, you want more fluency. But
the way that I look at it is that it's a very sensitive measure. If you're trying to see more of something, if you're going from, 250 to 300, that doesn't seem like, okay, fine. But if you're looking at that per minute, that would be from 0.6 per minute to 0.8 per minute. That's a significant difference in a way that's very, very meaningful. Okay. The other piece to the standard acceleration chart that is often not used is the time period that is being observed is recorded. All right. like I said, I'm going to dig up that video and post it for you so you can actually see how it's used. But we can actually see if a behavior was recorded over 5 minutes or 30 minutes or 5 hours or 20 hours and actually get a sense of, okay, is this number a representation of what happened throughout the day or within a small period of the day? All right. We don't see that on like a learn unit graph. We just see 250, 300, 280, 220, 260, 300 correct responses over the course of a week or two, right? But we don't know if one of those days was a half day, or if the child slept, or if they had a tantrum, or they came half an hour late. We don't know what that observable period was, so we don't know how comparable those data are. If we're looking at rate per minute, those are always comparable, and they're always a true number as opposed to percentage, which is a representation, right? So through this process, no matter how much instruction there was, no matter how long we worked with the child, no matter what was happening, there's always going to be it is an equalizing measurement. Precision teaching provides that, or that count per minute provides an equalizing measurement regardless of any of that other context. All right. So am I making any sort of sense so far? Kristen's got it. Good. So what precision teaching, what that allows for is us to say, okay, we've gotten to a point where we are seeing an amount of behavior or not seeing an amount of behavior at an appropriate rate. All right. So if it's, let's say, the behavior for decrease is, I don't know, hits, assaults. All right. And we've gotten it down to once an hour, which would be, if I do some quick math, less than 0.01 a minute, or 0.02 a minute, which would be down here on my count. All right. But maybe my observation of that is only for 1 hour. Then what I want to do is say, okay, can I see the same rate of behavior over 2 hours? So maybe when I expand my window, I start to see a behavior a minute, right? Because I'm putting the child in the demand situation for a longer period of time. They're not ready for that. So then in a 2-hour interval, I see an increased rate. So then at a 2-hour interval, I have to work with the child until they're back to 1 behavior an hour. And then I expand to 4 hours and then 8 hours. So without changing the intervention at all, I'm increasing the criterion, the true criterion, based on the actual factors that I want to control for and see and adjust. All right. So by providing this true measure of behavior, I have a much better sense of where my behavior actually stands, of how I should actually analyze the data that I'm looking at. It's much, much harder to analyze trend, analyze increases and decreases if all of the amount of behavior that I'm seeing is changing day to day to day to day to day. all right? The significance of the 20 learn unit block that we typically deal with is that controls for that in an arbitrary way. We're only going to give you 20 opportunities over the course of a day so that we have something standard to work with. But those are contrived opportunities. And it's really important to understand that we are controlling the child's opportunity to emit any particular response. All right? Yeah, in a big way, CC, it is. It's very much like time sampling, where we're not capturing all of the behavior. It's just, is it happening right now, right? But with the standard acceleration chart, we are saying, we're either saying this is the real amount of behavior that we see, or we are saying this is the amount of behavior that we saw, but this is how big the window of opportunity was that we actually looked for. So it understands that we're not going to be able to observe every child with every behavior 24 hours a day, but it allows for that opportunity to define the window. All right. There is the precision teachers out there, those that swear by this, they claim that there is no other way to have a true measure of behavior. They say that count per minute or count per time is the only appropriate measure of behavior, because count is real and time is real. Count is not sufficient by itself because it provides for too much variability, and time is not sufficient by itself because it doesn't account for count, right? But when you put those two together, there is no subjectivity in your analysis. Whether or not you agree with that is is up for interpretation. I'm not going to sit here and say that they are absolutely right or absolutely wrong. I think that there is a lot of value in understanding how fluency can and should be used. But once you are in that arena of using fluency and using count per minute, then it opens up a lot of doors for different tactics, different means of looking at behavior, different ways of intervening for specific kids. All right. How many of you have used either precision teaching or a standard acceleration chart or fluency as an intervention? Anyone? No, not really. Oh man. Okay. Well, read the chapter. In the evidence-based methods text, I believe there's an emphasis. It might be a little bit later on Morningside Academy. It's not until week 14. So make sure that when we get there that you do read that chapter. I'm going to find that video and post it again. Make sure you watch it so you understand how to use the standard acceleration chart, and challenge yourself or put yourself in a position to run something to fluency, to practice fluency instruction. It is a completely different way of looking at behavior than mastery instruction in that I think every behavior analyst needs to be comfortable with. All right, cool. Any questions? That was obviously a very, very quick overview. So I don't want to say, are there any questions on precision teaching? But do you guys feel that you have a decent enough foundation to then be able to go and read something on precision teaching and maybe understand what the heck it's talking about? Good. Do you have any questions about precision teaching? You don't know yet. Go ahead. Who's that?
Oh, I just had I was just curious. I was curious if some of the clinics that y'all are engaged in have used these or are using these.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't want to say across the board because it's very much, I'll put it this way. It probably should be used more than it is, number one. But it's very much behavior and child dependent, but also to some degree, it's dependent on the confidence level and comfort level of the behavior analyst, right? The standard acceleration chart is a very complicated tool to look at. I promise you it's not as complicated to actually use, but there is a barrier to using standard acceleration charts, and you have to have a BCBA that is comfortable using it. And if you don't, then you can be doing fluency training, but not precision teaching, because those are fluency training is encompassed in precision teaching, but it is not only precision teaching. It is not the totality of it. So yes, it is used in clinics, but it is not used in every clinic, and it is probably not used to the degree that it should be. All right. Cool. Good question. Good question. So but before we move on to direct instruction, how do you guys think that fluency training and precision teaching overall can be used relative to mastery teaching? What is the relationship between those two? What should be, what might be the relationship between those two things? Or are they the same? Any thoughts?
I know I missed like most of the discussion so far. But I remember Dr. Grant saying like fluency is one of your best measures of mastery. If something is truly mastered, you can do it under a fluency dependency because the demand is higher.
Good. Yeah, absolutely. So would you, let's start in a hierarchical way. So what Taylor said is absolutely right. Do you do fluency first or do you do mastery first?
Mastery.
Mastery, right. So first you got to know the thing. Then once you know the thing, can you do it fluently? Can you do it with automaticity, right? That is a very different contingency and set of skills and behaviors, all right? Again, I will say that precision teachers don't agree with that statement. They say that you can teach mastery through fluency. And it's possible, for sure. It's challenging. And you have to be comfortable and confident in your ability to deliver instruction through precision teaching. But teaching to mastery first is fine. Then teaching to fluency is what's often missed, right? Yeah, go ahead, Taylor.
What is the difference between fluency and just memorization of
Anyone
the
want
task?
to?
Like, because I'm thinking like, so the first time I really saw like fluency in clinic was with Dolch words.
Okay.
So, or sight words, but like, isn't it just sight words? You can't sound them out. So you're trying to teach them through memorization, through textual responding. So, but like in other instances, like how do you do fluency in other instances? I've actually never seen it other than like with the Dolch words program.
Okay.
That's where my confusion lies. Like, what I know is just the memorization.
All right. Anyone want to take a stab at responding?
I mean,
Wouldn't you
we,
with math facts?
Yep, you can do it with math facts. Absolutely. Does that strengthen Taylor's question? Because that seems like memorization.
Well, I mean, you're gonna memorize them, but as you get older with the math facts, the skills continue to build upon each other. So if you've learned them to mastery and you're fluent with the addition facts, so now when you're going to get to the, let's say the multiple step, fractions or whatever that you're doing, it's all going to use the same skills. It continues to build upon each other. So wouldn't you have to know them by mastery as well?
Excellent. Very good. So if you are fluent in single digit addition, yes, there is a component of memorization to that. But you can also be fluent in long division. Long division is not going to be a measure of memorization, but it's going to require these contingent, memorized, quote unquote, math fact responses. And that's okay. That's okay. Can you write in a fluent manner? Yeah. Can you write novel essays, novel papers fluently? Yeah. The typing is your memorization, but the or the letter formation is your memorization. But the actual paper, the actual text that you are writing, it's effectively verbally mediated in a contingent or fluent repertoire, right? So Taylor, we often focus our fluency instruction on these discrete memorizable memorization skills. And there's definitely a memorization component to some of those skills. But that's not to say that fluency or precision teaching only measures skills that can be memorized. Speaking can be a fluent repertoire. Manding can be a fluent repertoire. Walking can be a fluent repertoire. Making basketball shots can be a fluent repertoire. Any of these skills can be measured to fluency. But yes, we often with younger kids who have developmental delays, we end up using precision teaching for those very discrete, memorizable facts. So Taylor, you're accurate, but but by no means are those a limiting factor to what you can measure with fluency. All right? Good question. Good question. Okay, cool. Let's go on to direct instruction as a second method of teaching. All right. So same question as I started off with precision teaching. Has anyone done direct instruction before? All right, a lot of you guys have, so that's good. So what are we talking about when we were talking about direct instruction, or what do we think of? We think of language for learning. We think of reading mastery. We think of connecting math concepts. We think of, what am I missing? Teach a child to read well. What was that?
Head sprout?
No, let's not put head sprout into the direct instruction category. It's close, but I'm going to put it in the programmed instruction category.
We provide multiple opportunities for response for student responding?
So that's not going to be directly part of a curriculum-wise, the direct instruction, but that's going to be a component of it. All right. So we'll get where you're jumping the gun a little bit. All right. So all of these DI, big D, big I, capital D, capital I, direct instruction programs use little d, little I direct instruction. But there are other programs that don't have that same capital D, capital I direct instruction format that are still little d, little I. Edmark is a direct instruction curriculum. You know, any of the regular ed curriculum, Eureka, what are some of the other ones? What's the SPED, the big SPED one in schools? Why am I blanking? Unique. Thank you. Unique can be, it's not, but it can be a little d, little I direct instruction program. It has the capability to be. So first of all, understand that there is a series of programs called DI, direct instruction, as like a trademark word. And then there is a teaching methodology called direct instruction, little d, little I, yep, that many programs at least have the ability to follow. All right. So what are some of the hallmarks of both big D, capital D, capital I, and lowercase direct instruction? So we have teacher scripts. We have correction procedures. We have sequenced stimuli. We have skills that build upon themselves. We have criterion referenced mastery, levels of mastery. All of these components that we generally see in strong behavior analytic teaching built directly into the direct instruction curriculum. That's what we're talking about when we talk about DI. So I don't want you to think of, it's very challenging not to think of language for learning, reading mastery, those types of things. Those are the curriculum that developed DI for sure, all right? And really have perfected it. But the concepts that they are built on can be delivered through other typographies. So don't expect that you have to see the book with the spiral and the whole thing. There are other ways to show that, all right? What I find most critical to a direct instruction program, there are a couple of different components. So one, you have to have an intentionally sequenced curriculum. You have to have those components that truly build on each other. Second, you do have to have, to some degree or another, a teacher script. That has to be there. Now, the SRA DI programs, language for learning, reading mastery, those guys, are highly specific teacher scripts, right? You do not have to go that far in terms of your script, but the curriculum should present, like, for teachers, this is how this thing is presented. This is how this thing is presented, all right? When you go to Eureka, when you go to Unique, there are teacher guides saying this is how you should present this. If you contrast that, has anyone done, my teachers here, has anyone worked with like the Reader Writer Workshop before? Has anyone heard of that? Okay, so a couple of you have. Reader Writer Workshop, they're like, this is the lesson. These are the goals, go, right? There's no specific instruction that goes along with those units or those lessons. It's very much created whole cloth. So that is not direct instruction. All right. The third piece that we're looking for are these, I don't know whether I want to put it on the behavior side or the correction side. I think it's more the behavior side. But there are these well-defined behaviors and corrections that go along with it. So you have sequence, you have script, and you have operationalized definitions of behaviors that you are looking for. Those to me are really the components that we're targeting when we look at little d, little I direct instruction. Those DI programs meet all of those boxes, but again, so does Edmark, so does Eureka, so can Unique. Unique, I think, falls off a little too far in the scope and sequence, as well as on the well-defined behavior side. It is there, but it's not central to it, if that makes sense, if you're familiar with those programs. So when DI is followed, when DI is run as it's supposed to be run, there, for my money, there is no stronger type of curriculum. By the definition of what you would expect a curriculum to do, I don't think it's possible to be more robust than direct instruction. All right, you have specific skills that are built in a specific way to mastery, such that they can be used for higher order skills. That is like the definition of what a good curriculum should be doing. And DI puts it all on paper and says, go. All right. All of that being said, what DI does not do is prevent a teacher from being a teacher. DI does not prevent a teacher from injecting their own personality, their own means of instruction, their own relationship with the child into the curriculum, any more than any other curriculum that is out there. If you go up and you read your direct instruction curriculum, all right, everybody, stand up. Okay, clap your hands. Good job. Okay, sit down. No one's going to do well, right? But that's not teaching. That's reading a script. That's not what direct instruction is asking you to do. And that is not what direct instruction or how direct instruction is going to be successful. Direct instruction is a narrow guide of what you can do. But if I take a look at this the night before, okay, so we're going to be standing up, we're going to be touching our nose, we're going to be sitting down, got to make sure that I provide a good cue. All right, let's go. All right, everybody, you ready? I'm going to give you some directions, and when I snap my fingers, I want you to follow what I say. All right, on the count of 3, everyone stand up. They all stand up, right? One of those is much more engaging than the first one. There's nothing that says that just because you have a script, you have to stand there and read the script. You are still a teacher. You still have a personality. Your children are still responding to all of those other factors that can't be scripted. So please do not let anyone say that a scripted curriculum prevents you from being a teacher. It is a guide. It is as close to proven, and I do not use that word lightly, curriculum. It's up to you to implement it with fidelity, like anything else out there. All right. Direct instruction is not without flaws. It, especially now, and I think that this is going to change. I think it's going to catch up with what we're seeing out there. But as the language of education changes, it's a lot harder to adapt the language of a direct instruction curriculum. All right. I'm working in a parish right now that has used DI through our classrooms for a number of years and been very, very successful. As Louisiana state testing has changed, direct instruction, or definitely the old static purchased curricula that we've had, didn't change with the language. So what we have are kids who have learned skills, but when they get into inclusion classrooms, they don't know the language, the regular ed language of those skills. So what happens? They totally fall apart. It's like they're speaking, the teachers are speaking, or the curriculum is speaking a different language. So it can be very challenging to adapt the language of a curriculum, especially a scripted curriculum, to match the language of, the current language of education, especially when you've kind of bought into the direct instruction curriculum. You don't want to change the language because you know you've been successful with it. So you know you can teach the skill. So what your concern is as a teacher teaching direct instruction is that if I change these words, am I going to have the same outcomes? Am I going to have the same effect? And I don't see any reason why that wouldn't be the case, but you have to have faith in yourself and faith in the rest of the curriculum, the kind of critical attributes of the curriculum are going to get you there. All right. Any thoughts or questions about direct instruction? Any comments about direct instruction? A lot more of you have run DI type programs. Do you like it? Do you not like it? What are your guys' thoughts and feelings on DI?
I liked it. I used corrective reading in one of my schools, and it was a really successful program.
Yeah, corrective reading. I've actually never used corrective reading specifically. I've used like the decoding A, B, whatever, like some of those related ones. But Dr. Weber ran a huge pilot program in our district when we were working together on corrective reading, and had amazing results. She had absolutely amazing results. Cool. Anybody else?
So as St. Louis,
I lost you. We lost you. Hello, Taylor. She's gone. She'll come back. When you're back, try again.
do you know what
Oh, there we
that
go.
is? Like, I'm not in a class enough that actually uses it, but I've heard discussions, and one of our kids is about to get assessed for their placement with Retopia.
Say the whole, you cut out for a second, Taylor. Say that all again.
St. Lillian is like transitioning from my understanding, from reading mastery to Retopia. What is Retopia? Like, I haven't seen it, but I know like they're kind of assessing.
I don't know. Has anyone else worked with that before? You'll have to report back to us, Taylor, what it is.
Okay.
I'll do a little bit of research
And
see what I can find, but I've never heard of that.
and I had another question. So
Yeah, go ahead.
I know like Dr. Weber has created like STEM math and STEM reading. Are those DI programs?
They can be.
My experience with them is very limited. Like I've seen like the little book, and that's about it. But I know we have it around.
Yes. So I would say that those lessons utilize components of direct instruction. I have from, and that's from my same as you, my reading through of some of those lessons, not my own experience running those lessons. So I would have to see it in practice, but also knowing Dr. Weber, I can't imagine that she would design a curriculum that didn't use those components to their fullest effect. Like that is her thing for sure. So yes, I would feel comfortable categorizing that as a DI program. Cool.
We use Wit and Wisdom in Iberville Parish for our ELA curriculum, and it's
Do you like that?
I do. I think the kids enjoy the stories weekly, and it's a lot of, I'm in second grade, so it's like writing every week. So it builds them to write paragraphs every week. So I think them going through the writing process is really good for them, especially in third grade.
I want to see a little bit more. So St. James Parish also uses Wit and Wisdom, and our special ed into inclusion teacher, that was actually the parish that we had trouble on the reading side, getting the reading mastery language to align with, I think it was Reading Wonders when we did it before. They've switched to Wit and Wisdom. But what she's done is taken Wit and Wisdom and like we talked about, use the language of Wit and Wisdom, overlaid that into Reading Mastery, and so that way when they get to Wit and Wisdom, they're able to get there. And she continually says, like, they're getting it, they're meeting their goals. So I feel like Wit and Wisdom is structured in such a way to really bring all those students along, which is good.
Yes, we have Wit and Wisdom for ELA, and then CKLA is like our phonics program.
Yeah, and I think a lot of districts are moving to CKLA, which I've seen a little bit of, but not a ton. Good. All right. Any other thoughts on DI before we move on? Okay, so the last major component to talk about today is programmed instruction and teaching machines. And this is an interesting piece to talk about. Programmed instruction overall and the teaching machine was a concept that Skinner had in the 50s and 60s of actually being able to be taught through using three-term contingencies through technology, through a machine. The original teaching machine was actually at Teachers College in New York, where Dr. G and Dr. Weber and I went to school. Like, it was in the basement of Teachers College. I did not get to see it, unfortunately, but it was there. And it did exactly what it sounds like it did. There were programmed lessons that were put into it. It gave you antecedents, you responded, and it provided feedback. And if you got it wrong, it represented the antecedent, you responded until you got it right. And it taught you to a mastery level. Well, as I think you could probably understand, that idea did not fit particularly well with the school available technology of the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and aughts. But now that's changed. Now we have a very different set of technology available to us. Has anybody used Khan Academy? That is programmed instruction. That is a modern version of teaching machine. Headsprout is Taylor said. That is programmed instruction. That is a teaching machine. When you have adaptive technology, not adaptive, sped adaptive, but technology that can respond to you and adapt to your responses and learn with you. That is programmed instruction. And I think as many of us see, that's where we're headed, right? That's the direction that we are going. The development of these types of automated curricula is very much a direction that we will see in the future. E-schools, iTeach, iReady, all of the Zern, excellent. These are all they are all not even curricula, right? They are virtual classrooms that are pre-programmed to be individualized. And there's a lot of power within that. The teacher becomes the decision maker. The teacher intervenes, the teacher provides tactics. The teacher may set the curriculum, but the instruction is there for the student to access. Dr. Joe Lang, who is the founder of Headsprout, I was very, very fortunate when I went to Morningside Academy in Seattle while I was in grad school. I got to sit with Dr. Lang at the Headsprout headquarters. He kind of walked me through the whole thing. And I sat in the room where Headsprout was effectively invented. And it is just a regular room with a conference table in the middle. All four walls are whiteboards. And they scripted every single component. You do this, this happens. You do this, this happens. You do this, this happens. Then we have this response, and that response, and this response. So Taylor, when you're thinking of Headsprout as DI, programmed instruction takes those components of DI and it automates them. And that's the difference there. It makes it a virtual feedback loop, all right? So you have technology that's providing that type of response. Dr. Lang was working on a science curriculum. It was like I think it was a 4th grade science curriculum, start to finish, met all the standards to be delivered for an entire classroom, not one-to-one like Headsprout. It was a classroom, a class-wide curriculum. It was to be delivered by a teacher. The teacher could say whatever they wanted, but as long as they pressed the buttons and gave appropriate feedback to the kids would learn. That was his goal. With DI, the idea is to take the what's the right word? Take the variability out of the language so that the critical words were always said. All right? You wanted to make sure that as long as the teacher read these words, they could say whatever they wanted, but these are the words that are going to lead to instruction. With programmed instruction, the teacher should be able to do and say whatever they want, but as long as they touch these buttons, learning will occur. All right? Programmed instruction has been in development for a long time, but as our technology improves, our ability to provide individualization, to provide classroom instruction, to get feedback, to engage students is going to increase exponentially. We all see how children respond to electronics. There's a lot of data supporting that when education or educational content is delivered meaningfully through electronics, students learn better. That's not to say that there isn't a value in face-to-face, in-person teaching. There's social, there's individualization that we can't get on electronics yet. There's group learning, there's tons and tons of things. But in terms of the content itself, the motivation is there, the way children respond to it, the gamification of education, all these things are things that are inherent in electronic and program learning that you just can't capture in the same way. And I think it is important for us as behavior analysts, not from a like discrete trial learn unit standpoint to be involved, but from a curricular design and mastery and fluency idea and motivation. And there's a lot that behavior analysis has to offer to the wider field of electronic learning via direct instruction and programmed instruction, that I think that we have opportunities to really work with different fields on through our knowledge of what it takes to educate a child in a really significant way. Does anyone have any experience with programmed instruction? Headsprout, Headsprout. What are your guys' thoughts on Headsprout or
It's
Khan?
cute.
It's cute.
Yeah.
It's good, right? And it's motivating. It's not learning. It's a game.
Yeah, that was actually what I was about to say. My experience with it, it was very interesting because we were having nonstop behaviors with this one child when she first started with us at the clinic, except when Headsprout was going on. We put the computer or the iPad, whatever it was, in front of her and let her go through it. She could sit and do Headsprout, and it was reinforcing in itself and would not emit any aberrant behaviors. And I'm talking we had severe SIB to where she could leave a bruise on her forehead, or she would slam her head into the table. We were seeing a lot of destruction of property, but the moment Headsprout was in front of her, it was different. It wasn't a demand anymore.
And it wasn't, if I know who you were talking, I do know you're talking about, but it's not the case that was stereotypic. It was learning. She was actively engaged with it and learning to read through it.
I give Headsprout the credit for her learning, her reading ability where it's at now. Completely.
So it's not what I do think it's important that we don't look at programmed instruction as, oh, it's reinforcing because it's on an iPad, it's on a computer, and kids like YouTube, so they like this. No. That's not how this is functioning. It is what I'm referring to is true teaching through programmed instruction, right? And it is there, and it is very, very much real. It's not just the child likes looking at the screen. That helps, but it's not. It's a very different behavior than observing YouTube or a game or something else. Good. What about Khan Academy or programs like that? Anyone have any thoughts there? Khan Academy, I can say, is somewhat of a blend between program instruction and teacher-led instruction, right? It's not going to quite stand alone the way Headsprout is, but it's pretty close.
I know St. James Parish, with the way their COVID has completely messed up the structure of the class and everything. They use, on top of using iReady, they use Ingenuity,
Mhm.
So like when they do their hybrid classes and they do their days online, I know I've seen my brother do Ingenuity before, where it's supposed to sit through like it's the lessons, the quizzes, tests, every homework, everything in it. It gives the corrections. I didn't see very much reinforcement through it. I'm not gonna lie, like it was just like a green checkbox, move on. I can also say there for students that are more advanced and know how to manipulate devices, the lessons are very easy to go through because there isn't a requirement like they go through the page and it's not like, okay, let's pop quiz, let's do a little spot check. Like you can just keep pressing arrows and get through the lesson. But I mean, it took maybe 1 or 2 learning units in itself for my brother to learn, oh, this means I'm gonna fail my test because I completely just skipped through a lesson. But that was like the main flaw I saw with it was that, like how easy it is to jump through the lessons.
And I think that with the problem with a lot of those the I don't want to say startups, but the programmed instruction, the Zern, the iReady, is they are probably inherently effective, but they require fidelity of use by both the instructor and the student. With HeadSprout, fidelity is built in. You can't use it wrong, right? It has powerful reinforcement. It has analysis within. It has decision making. It has go back and rework these lessons. You can't just kind of blow through it and not attend. And that's the difference between A and B is huge. All of the programs out there, when used right and analyzed right, are going to produce results. Why? Because content is content. But there has to be a difference between electronic facilitation of instruction and programmed instruction. We have to be able to look at those two things differently. All right.
The only thing that we use Zern, and the only thing that I find about that is that some students don't like to use certain strategies. And with those lessons, they have to use those strategies to get through to the Tower of Power or whatever they go through at the end. But so I tell them in my classroom, you use a strategy that works best for you. So they have to use that certain strategy to get past. And that's the only thing with Zern. But
and that's, whether you want to define that as good or bad is interesting, right? Like a child there might be a high barrier to learning a particular strategy, but once you master that strategy, that might be an easier strategy or a more efficient strategy. When you look at how in math in particular, how the strategies are changing from when we learned how to do multiplication, long division, higher addition. We as adults are resistant. Teachers might be a bad example, but the general adult population are resistant to changing some of these strategies. But when you stop and think about it, there's a real reason for that, right? I remember, so point being, in class, when I was teaching multi-digit addition, I taught the standard algorithm, right? And I kind of exposed them to some of the other methods, but I said, standard algorithm, you're going to be fluent with that. We don't use the standard algorithm on a day-to-day basis. We don't use standard algorithm when we're doing mental math, right? We use other strategies, and there's educational words for those other strategies right now, and I don't know them offhand. But the new ways of teaching that Zern is going to require are the strategies that we actually use as adults, in addition to standard algorithm, in addition to some third method. So is it right for us as teachers to override the curriculum developers who, hypothetically at least, had a rationale for teaching this strategy? I don't know. Sometimes we do know better, sometimes we don't. I think that if a curriculum maker decides it's significant enough to put in, and a district does its homework in adopting that curriculum, teach the curriculum as it's supposed to be taught, and the program instruction ensures that. It does not allow you to say, oh no, that's fine, we can do that later, or not do that at all, for better or worse. All right, cool. So as you're reading these chapters, and I do, particularly the precision teaching and direct instruction chapter, I highly recommend that everyone take a good long look at those. But be thinking of maybe in Dr. Cohen's class, some decision analysis, potentially some data collections, where that you could use some of these, I don't want to say strategies or tactics, but teaching methods. How can you look at these in an experimental way, in a data-based way, in a research way that's going to have significant impact on your students? Direct instruction and precision teaching are powerful, available tools to teaching a wide array of skills, right? Some of the other tactics that we look at are very specific to a subset of skills or a smaller set of skills. But these three ideas here are ubiquitous in what you can teach. And I cannot emphasize enough, especially with precision teaching and direct instruction, how powerful they can be. All right, I'll leave it there. I will get, I'm hopefully tomorrow's, it's not going to happen. Hopefully Thursday, I will dig up the original video that I have. Hopefully I have it. I really, really hope I have, on how to use the standard acceleration chart. And I will get that posted for you guys. If I can't find it, then I will do my best to make a new one in an appropriate amount of time. All right? Cool. Any questions, thoughts, concerns? Go stay warm. It dropped a little bit. Cozy up. Have a good night. And I will see you guys in 2 weeks. Have a good one.